On the podcast today, we are going to speak about the 10th chapter of the Tao Te Ching, which makes up the 10th episode of the 81 meditations of the Tao Te Ching, where Guyang and I dissect every chapter of the Tao Te Ching, which is taking a while, but we are getting there. And on every episode, we usually use the Jiafu Feng and Jane English translation, as well as the Derek Lin translation. There are many good translations out there, Hans-Georg Mauella, Philip J. Ivanhoe. There's plenty of good translations out there, and we may alternate between some of those in the future, but we've been using these two primarily. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, this one is Jia Fu Feng and Jane English's version. Carrying body and soul and embracing the one, can you avoid separation? Attending fully and becoming supple, can you be as a newborn babe? Washing and cleansing the primal vision, can you be without stain? Loving the people and ruling the country, can you be without cleverness? Opening and closing the gates of heaven, can you play the role of woman? Understanding and being open to all things, are you able to do nothing? Giving birth and nourishing, bearing yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit, leading yet not dominating. This is the primal virtue.
And this is Derek's translation. In holding the soul and embracing oneness, can one be steadfast without strain? In concentrating the energy and reaching relaxation, can one be like an infant? In cleaning away the worldly view, can one be without imperfections? In loving the people and ruling the nation, can one be without manipulation? In the heavenly gates opening and closing, can one hold to the feminine principle? In understanding clearly all directions, can one be without intellectuality? Bearing it, rearing it, bearing without possession, achieving without arrogance, raising without domination, this is called the mystic virtue. So in Chinese, there's like 17 lines in the proper Chinese translation.
Yeah.
I really like both translations. Mm-hmm. And there's a bit of a similarity between the Bhagavad Gita to this chapter as well, isn't there?
Yes.
Like there's a big emphasis. It's almost like the same dialogue with Arjuna and Krishna, right? Like Krishna advising Arjuna to practice nishkarma karma, to somehow be a leader without seeking praise or credit, but also holding on to Vishnu or Brahman. And in this sense, it's about holding on to the Tao in our everyday life and not being caught up in the dramas.
Yes. Again, in the Bhagavad Gita story, is that Arjuna is in a battlefield against his family, right? So that there is that a bit of a confusion for him, that the fact that he needs to fight against them, but he's in a war situation. So that what does he have to do, right? But then Krishna saying that you need to follow a will of God, and you don't get attached to the fruit of the action.
Yes, nishkarma karma, right?
Yeah.
Not being attached to the fruit of your action. Basically, effortless action. It's very similar. Nishkarma karma and wu-wei are very similar in, principally they're very similar. Where it's about acting without not being attached to the fruits of your action, and almost as a limb of the Tao, like you're moving as sort of an emotionless limb of the Tao, where you're not caught up in your own, biases and your own personal agendas.
You are acting, but without vairagya, without the reaction.
Without reaction.
Without the ragya, I should say.
So without ragya, yeah. So you're acting with vairagya.
Yeah, with vairagya.
Well, you're not acting with vairagya. You're not reacting with vairagya.
Yes.
So you're not contributing to the madness and to more chaos. And this chapter also, we were speaking before the podcast, it's really in some sense pointing to also leaders, but also on an individual level as well. And it also hints at how a sage, in some sense, how they are and how they should behave in some sense.
Yes, as a like an individual who are in some sort of responsible position,
Yes,
right?
anyone,
so
yeah.
leader or a sage or a teacher,
Mother or father.
exactly. And again, like you mentioned, the individual level as well, it applies the same.
Same, yeah. See, and on an individual level, it's kind of like how you govern your own life.
Yes.
It's not how you govern others. It's
Yeah.
and that's probably more important in the chapter, I think, how we govern our own lives, because in some sense, the individual is the community, the individual is the world. You know, it's a different way of looking at it, but that's really, in some sense, how it is. And so let's get into the first part of the chapter. So Jia Fufeng says,
Carrying body and soul and embracing the one, can you avoid separation?
and Derek says, in holding the soul and embracing oneness, can one be steadfast without strain? They're basically pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is more about, can you be in the world without being drawn into the chaos? Can you hold on to the Tao?
Yes.
Can you be one with the Tao without getting drawn into ragya,
Yes.
without reacting to the world and being drawn into
Yeah.
the worldly affairs, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Again, can you avoid the separation between body, soul, and the one?
And the one,
right?
yes.
Yes.
Can you be a holistic, basically, right?
Yeah,
Like, can you be?
right. So knowing body and soul, but then also you need to be able to embrace the one, which is the Tao or
Yes.
universe.
Yes.
Yeah, without getting drawn into the worldly dramas.
Yeah. This is very common, actually, with the Wahoo Ching as well.
Yep.
This kind of focus, like carrying body and soul, which we all do, but some people are disconnected from the spirit or the self, which also they're disconnected also then from the Tao.
Yes.
So they really are just carrying body.
Again, like actually before embracing the one, we also need to take in consideration of body and soul has to be in one harmony as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like that, is it Lateratus, that the Tool
song,
songs, the lyrics that overthinking, overanalyzing, separate the body from the mind? Yes,
Exactly,
that's what it
that's
says.
what it says, yeah.
Yeah, again, so how body and soul can be separated, we could question that, but we act often more than not that we do act like that because our mind is always running 100 miles an hour, and we don't even know where we are at physically, and we're not mindful of where we are, what we're doing, and things like that. So, body and soul are completely not in harmony.
Yeah.
So that doesn't allow you to not just embrace, even knowing what the Tao is at all, really. You know? So that carrying body and soul first, simultaneously. And from that place that you can only embrace the one, which is the Tao, the universe.
And like in the Lateralis, in the Tool song, it answers a lot of questions about this one, right? Like, because when we do overthink, when we over-intellectualize, we do sort of separate ourselves from nature, from the one, from our own essence, which is actually one with the Tao. And so we kind of separate ourselves. It's almost like it eclipses the reality. Yeah. And that's what Tool is saying in that song, right? Like the more you're thinking, the overthinking, you are actually separate from the spiral. Mm-hmm. So from the spiral of life, from Lateralis, right? So, and a lot of people are, especially in the modern day, because of the boom of rationality, are caught in this. And this is why we are making a world where it's so focused on tools and this and that and practicality as opposed to knowledge and art and all of the beautiful things. You even see the humanities, right, in university and this and that, in some sense are under attack from people who are just like, you know, they're just pragmatic people. They don't understand the deeper divine qualities of existence. Right. You know, the importance of art, literature, music, you know, you name it, right?
So, yeah, it only keeps ourselves away from our true nature and true reality, which is actually physical world, which is nature, actually, in sense. So the form of art, like you mentioned, painting, literature, and music, is, I think, most primal version of our expression of
Yes.
ourselves, and which is art. But now, from overthinking, overanalyzing, only contribute to have an imagination, and that imagination can go as far as it could, as extraordinary as it could, and things like that. So again, we are talking about like virtual world and this and that. It's all like a product of our own imagination. Imagination is, again, a product of overthinking and overanalyzing. That's again, all technology come from overanalyzing too, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
it's
of course, yeah.
that's today's science. So that's the result of it.
That's the result of it. And as you know from me managing the channel, YouTube channels, I get a lot of comments where people can get into a habit of they overthink about what's being said. And I sometimes want to say to them, just, maybe listen again and try to, like, because you are overanalyzing.
Yes.
And this is a big problem on the spiritual path, right? Like a lot of people who claim to be spiritual are just very analytical people who will associate with certain things that are trendy or hip that they think are spiritual, but their actual attitude is not spiritual because they overanalyze, they're overthinking a lot of the time. I mean, and there's the time for that, right? But there's also a time not for that, like, and that's kind of what Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi's point is, that a lot of people are walking around all the time like a Confucian, where they're analyzing this and that and breaking everything apart, when, that may be time for that, like when you're cooking a meal or something like this, and, you little bit of spice here and there, and, a little bit of, but like not all the time.
Not everything.
Not everything. Maybe if you are listening to knowledge, just listen without letting your ego get into the way. I remember once Alan Watts said, at the start of one of his lectures, he said, okay, it's good that you're all here, but I hope you all checked your ego at the door before you walked in. And it's okay, you can pick it up as you leave. But when you come into here, you're going to listen to something different, and I don't want you to be here and overthinking about what's going to be said or overanalyzing, because you're not actually going to get anything from that.
Again, that's coincide with the Jiddu Krishnamurti's on listening.
Yes.
He actually dedicate whole like a talk on listening and that's why there is a book, a transcribed book on listening, really.
Yeah, for sure.
And how to listen. And if you say that to just random people, what do you mean by listen? I am listening, but not that kind of listening. You just hearing the sound, hearing the noise. That's not listening.
No.
Listening as a true sense that you are able to understand where the other person coming from their perspective, while you put your perspective aside, and really listening from where the other person coming from, and just transferring your perception over to others, so that you can purely listen what that person is talking about.
Exactly. I think that most people exist in a world, and we've all existed in this world, where there's a little bit of interference between what they are listening to and their own mind interpreting it. So you might be saying something to me, but I'm kind of listening to you, but it's with always an eye on what I'm going to say and how I see the world. So there's like this interference signal pattern, And they tried to address this in the early teachings of the Buddha, right? Like in the Nikayas, like one of the focuses was on, a lot of people say, what's the function of chanting and stuff like that in the Theravada tradition specifically? And it's like, well, it's about listening itself. Even though we're talking about the teachings of the Buddha, but the reason why we chant and we all get together, we congregate in a sangha and we listen, is to actually enhance our ability of listening. Do you really listen? You know what I mean? Are you really listening? So are you listening to the chant,
Chant of your own voice.
Yeah.
And others.
And others. Are you really listening to it? Not interpreting what it means.
Yeah.
You know what it means. The power of chanting, like the Ratana Sutra or something like, or a sutra like this, is to enhance that faculty of listening. And it's a very long sutra. So like, can you sit there and listen for half an hour? Just pure listening. Don't interpret the words. The merit is in listening to the words anyway. It's kind of what Buddhists would say, right? The merit is in listening to the words anyway.
Yes.
So,
And again, like maybe you experience this too. When you're in a conversation with someone, you're talking about something, you can already tell that what the other person is thinking from just looking at their eyes. They're already processing what they were gonna say after you finish your talk.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
So when that's happening, like your head is not that person's head is not purely calm or quiet at all. It's still engaging with their own thoughts while you're talking, right? So that's not your pure listening.
Yeah, it's not. Jiru was a good example, right, of pure listening. Like he would have a bit of a pause after someone would ask a question and this and that. And another good example, love him or hate him, you know, a lot of people are on the fence with this guy, but Osho, for example, when someone would ask Osho a question, but he, like, you know, it might be a little bit of theatrics, but like he was very intelligent individual, and he would really sit and think deeply about what someone had asked, instead of like already thinking about what he's going to say. Now, a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, that's not the art of communication and this and that." Well, you know, that's debatable, right? Like, okay, we can say that there is a bit of art of communication when I'm talking to you and you're kind of formulating what you're going to say in response.
Okay.
But that's kind of not what we're saying. It's kind of different, where you can be in a conversation, what you were saying is, and then maybe you disagreed with what they've said, and you're already coming up with a debate or a defense, and then we're in this constant debating process where we're not really listening really to each other.
Exactly.
Not like Osho anyway.
Shh.
Yeah.
And then like a minute or two later.
There was I don't know if people probably remember this, but I think it was an Australian reporter was interviewing Osho for 60 minutes, and it was kind of funny banter between them two. But he would ask Osho a question, Osho, and then he said, "You're also good with, you're impeccable with your timing." Like, say how to respond and this and that. But
that's right, yeah.
But it's pretty funny. But it really is. There is an art of listening that I think that most people have lost. And I think that when you come across, especially Eastern spiritual traditions, it's about enhancing that. It's really about enhancing that. So,
and I guess speaking of on listening, I think that naturally leads to the kind of next part, that attending fully and becoming supple. That's exactly what we've been talking about, isn't it? Attending fully is almost kind of, can you be fully at present in that moment?
Yes.
And fully like absorb into that moment and just observe what's happening around you.
Yep.
And if there is someone talking to you, can you be fully listening, attending fully, and becoming supple?
Yeah. So can you remain relaxed? Can you be there present, fully, like complete mindfulness, isn't it? Really complete mindfulness.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the point of that line, like, and that's why, you know, that part, and also it says the newborn babe, right? Like, so can you be like an infant?
Infant, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so.
Again, we know that Lao Tzu uses the babe analogy a lot in the Tao Te Ching.
Yep.
The babe, newborn babe, is
infant,
like infant. Yes.
Yeah, he uses the infant. He uses the valley spirit. He uses the bellows. You know, the feminine to represent the Tao.
Yes.
To represent that sort of naturalness.
Yes.
So he uses a lot of those, and so that's basically, like you said, like that sort of that art of listening. Can you be there fully in that experience, but remain with that childlike mind? You know, once we become adults, you know, that's kind of
know it all.
We know everything,
heard it
right?
all.
Well, it's getting younger these days, isn't it? With Google and that, like, if you start talking to a 15-year-old and this and that, they can tell you, they can tell you everything about your life that you've done wrong.
It's
you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of sad that like the innocence get lost in the early age nowadays.
Yes.
Because of the overthinking and overanalyzing.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly. So, you know, that infant represents that innocence, as you said, but also like the infinite potential we all have. So, you know, when you're born, you have infinite potential. Your life has all the possibilities in the world.
Right.
And so can you remain in that place? Like that's kind of like the art of Wu Wei, right? Can you remain in that present effortless, but attent, attitude and way of life.
Yes.
Can you remain in that without, these thoughts and worries that adults and that have come into? Because an infant doesn't have that.
No.
An infant doesn't react to distracting thoughts or worries. They don't have them.
Yeah.
That's why they have a childlike mind, and that's why they experience life very joyfully.
Yeah, that's why they always find anything and everything so interesting, and they're always so excited about something.
Yeah.
And they're always having fun, basically.
You can give a kid, like a newborn babe, a stick, and they'll do anything. It's fascinating.
They might come up with something completely different use than what we can come up with, right? Because they're so blank canvas.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they represent the unhewn wood, the uncarved block, as opposed to the carving and polishing metaphor of Confucius, which unfortunately as adults we represent because we've gone through the socialization process of Gaiang, you are like this, you should see the world like this is who you are, where the newborn babe, the infant, doesn't have any of those concepts. They just are attending fully.
Exactly.
And are supple.
Yes.
They are soft,
Yes.
So that leads us into the next couple of lines.
Yeah, washing and cleansing the primal vision. Can you be without stain?
Yes. So in cleaning away the worldly view, can you be without imperfections? So these two lines is kind of sums up a lot of the Taoist approach to how we should cultivate ourselves in some sense.
Again, as you mentioned earlier about socialization that we all go through, that is already warping our primal vision, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the primal vision that we all possessed once upon a time when we were infant gets polluted and gets warped from socialization and cultural conditioning, right? So can you be without stain? Well, we should strive for it, right? To attain reattain the primal vision again.
Well, common in Korea, right? Wiping the Tao.
Yes.
Cleaning the mirror.
Yes.
Cleaning
exactly.
the mirror. Can you clean the mirror? And the mirror here is the mind, right?
Yes.
Like, can you, as Derek says, can you be without imperfections? Can you clean the vrittis, the mental activity? Can you clean the basement, the samskaras, out of your subconscious? Can you do this?
Right, like as you mentioned that mirror analogy. Mirror just reflects on what exactly been reflected on, right?
Yes.
But then we put the dirt all over it, and it warped in funny way. So we not being able to see what's been exactly reflected on, right?
Yep.
So that's it needs to be cleaned, no stain.
Yeah, you can't see the reality as it truly is.
Yes.
Because your primal vision is obscured. You can't see.
Yes.
And like you said with the mirror, and also the lake analogy, using the reflection analogy, reflects everything around it perfectly.
Yes.
But once you throw a rock into the lake,
Then ripple,
then there's the vrittis,
Yes,
the vrittis begin. And so you have to, as Derek says, like in cleaning away the worldly view, you know what I mean? You got to get rid of this kind of worldly, the worldliness, like as the Buddha said, if you are a spiritual aspirant, first order of business is getting rid of worldliness.
Yes.
The mundaneness, that kind of that hum of existence that people are caught in, that people actually justify because they're caught in it.
Stop getting distracted by these worldly issues and news and things like that, and stay away from it, and just to remain innocent, to get that innocence back somehow.
Somehow, yeah. But like it says there, right? Like in cleaning, in washing and cleansing the primal vision.
Yes.
That's how we get the innocence away.
That's right.
That's the Taoist cultivation method. And people will say, how do we do that and this and that? Well, there's various forms. There's no one method for all. Obviously, meditation and contemplation and everything like that is part of it.
Yeah.
But there is no one specific meditation practice or this and that. You have to have bodhicitta. You have to have that dedication to the path that I think some people don't really have. They get tired and they give up.
Yeah, and it has to be sustained effort as well, which is also, I think, it's kind of a skill.
It's a skill. And it's a lifetime path to us.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can just, these days, spirituality has become like this trendy thing that
you get into it. And
yeah. Maybe some soccer mums and that get into it, and then once it conflicts with those sorts of people's, I'm using soccer mums as an example here. If it conflicts with the kind of their worldview or the situation that they're in, that they find themselves in, like with their kids or this and that, then it's easily cast off.
Yes.
But if you really do follow the Eastern spiritual path sincerely, then you don't just whimsically cast it off, because it's much more important than that. So we're on to the next couple of lines.
Yeah, loving the people and ruling the country. Can you be without cleverness?
In loving the people and ruling the nation, can one be without manipulation? This is where it gets into what we were speaking about earlier, leadership and So it's pretty self-explanatory, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, that one, the Derek Lin's translation says without manipulation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, cleverness, you can relate that to manipulation too, can't you? I mean, in some sense, like cleverness in the sense that you can be manipulating people if you are a leader. And
cleverness actually includes more mental activity.
Definitely these two lines is probably something that a lot of the world leaders at the moment could probably contemplate upon. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but if you know what I mean, everyone listening or watching knows exactly what I mean. So, So, like, again, you don't want to be contradictory or hypocritical here too. Like, so in loving the people and ruling the nation, so as a leader, you ought to love the people, right? You ought to, like, because you have other people's best interests at heart. You're supposed to be a very selfless person.
Yes.
But a lot of rulers do fall for manipulation and control, right? So.
Yes, it's funny that how human mind works, that once we taste a little bit of power, people get addicted to that power, right? They're ruling others and ruling a nation and things like this. But again, that's completely against Taoism.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's being a true leader is for people, and you are there for people, so that you're lowering yourself. You lead people from behind again. That's the virtuous thing as a leader.
Yeah. Well, what you mentioned is kind of like how a sage leads, right? Like leads from behind. Like Lao Tzu's main point in a lot of the chapters for people who are in positions of power is, can you lead from behind? A lot of people think that that's a very strange concept, but leading from behind is being humble, being caring, being selfless, being compassionate, the intrinsic human qualities that a leader actually should amplify, or they should have amplified qualities of that, rather than maybe someone who doesn't have amplified qualities of that.
Yes.
But we don't, sadly in the modern world, we don't value those intrinsic qualities. When we look at a leader these days, right, we look at people in the sense of, can they manage a country? Are they business oriented? Are they good at economics? The things that actually should be way further down the list,
exactly.
Because it's the ruler who has those intrinsic qualities amplified that can deal with the economy and these and that
100%.
a lot better.
100%. Again, loving people has to come first.
Yes.
But obviously that's if not even in a conversation, it's right at the bottom, isn't it? Like you said, it's all about growth and progression and economies and all this kind of things, which all actually secondary. It's not important. It's all about prosperous of ordinary people's life.
Yes.
Prosperity of
people's life. Yeah.
People's life, more than profit and progression and things like that.
Yeah. And that's what a good leader always does. They love the people first, and then they deal with those other matters second.
Yeah.
First of all, to be honest, like, people trust a leader who does love the people genuinely. Obviously, there's always going to be horses for courses, right? Some people are not going to like the leader and this and that. And it's not going to be 100%. But you can get a majority of people who will resonate with a certain person if they are genuine and their intentions are pure.
I think we can use it as like a sport organization.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have a good leader who really cares about each and every one of the players' welfare and mental state and this and that. Then like that sporting team, we naturally have a very good camaraderie and good atmosphere and this and that. So they would like to perform for each other and protect each other. And the victory will just follow. Right?
Yep.
Well, instead, we'll see a lot of the cases that usually the bottom of the tables, the teams which are bottom of the tables, are the one that chasing the victory.
Yeah.
Right? When you chase the victory, it seems like that victory looks like getting farther and farther away. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, you are calculating what to gain first. Rather than taking care of welfare of the players and members of the team and this and that, then that victory is just not gonna come.
Yeah, it's goal oriented. It's not holistic.
Yeah.
So like you said, like a good coach, for example, will take care of the player environment, the club in general, and and obviously, to be frank, like if you're in a sports organization, it's all about winning, but how do you win?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you're just focusing, like you said, on victory, often, like especially with some of the sports teams that you and I follow, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's it's paradoxical in a sense, right? Like and I think a lot of, particularly sport, a lot of people in athletics and that have actually realized that a lot recently. Maybe through reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu or someone like this, or maybe through reading the Tao Te Ching,
Right. I think people can't go the path of Lao Tzu because people are impatient. Because this path, we need to be patient.
Yep.
We need to be able to wait for others, right?
Yep.
While you do the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, these lines is all about like, can you be above meddling with other people? Can you be without interference, especially as a ruler? Like, can you not mess with their lives? So Lao Tzu recommends, like, for example, like leadership without attachment or interference.
Yes.
As we know, like Taoism is the path of non-interference, right? So his advice to a leader is, can you actually lead without interfering with people's lives, without meddling, right? Like this is one of the main premises of the Tao Te Ching, is can you do that? Yeah. And also this chapter also relates to the individual in some sense. If we look at it from an individual level, can we be in charge of our own lives?
Yes.
In a healthy manner, not tyrannizing ourselves and not being critical of ourselves. Can we really be in charge of our own lives without actually overly interfering with our own nature? So you're a great violinist, right? Like, but then you go, I'm sick of this. I want to be a drummer, and you just start doing something that's completely alien. You know what I mean? And thinking that you're going to get a similar result. And people do think that, but as you know, the people do think that they can change directions and this and that. And
you can do everything. And
yes.
You can achieve everything.
But you can't. You can't. Yeah. And so on a personal level, this also relates to how you deal with others. Like, so can you mind your own business? Can you stay out of people's business?
Yeah. And just taking good care of yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. So the problem is the more you meddle with other people, the more you interfere with other people, is the more you contribute to more chaos and conflict and this and that. Yeah. No matter how benevolent you are, but that's true, right?
Yeah, that is.
And that's what Lao Tzu's point is to the ruler.
Yes.
I know you're trying to bring about harmony and this and that, but the more you interfere, the more you're actually contributing to more madness.
Yes, it's just interference actually.
It's interference, yeah.
Again, that mind fasting story in Zhuangzi as well. It's the same
with Yang Wei. Yeah,
Yang Wei. That's right.
The more you're going to change the ruler according to your personal agenda.
Yeah.
So But then, mind fasting is what you need to do.
Yes.
You need to get rid of the ideas that you have in your mind
That's right.
of how the world should be, So, let's go on to the next line.
Yep. So opening and closing the gates of heaven, can you play the role of woman?
So in the heavenly gates opening and closing, can one hold to the feminine principle? Same.
It's
Same.
same, yeah. Yeah.
There's many different ways to look at this one, isn't there? Like interpretations of the heavenly gates, right? Some people actually used to relate the heavenly gates to the weather when they would read this chapter, but again, you would be reading it from a very superficial view.
Yeah,
And
that
happened,
is very
and that happened a lot in the Chinese. But I think when it was translated into other languages, people started to, that's some of the benefit of translation, right? Where like if you're a good translator, you can actually give the crux of what it is. But when you read the original text, you can sit there and think, what the hell is Lao Tzu, what's Lao Tzu talking about here? If you have no commentary or...
Yes. Yeah.
So basically the main premise of the heavenly gate is the mind, right? It's the opening and closing of the mind. So, but here, the opening and closing of the mind being being active and the mind being inactive.
Right.
This process of, so you go through your life, right? You are active and we all go through this process of being active and inactive. Obviously, most people don't like to be inactive. They're constantly yang oriented.
Yep.
But can you remain flexible and soft as a woman, so to speak, or the feminine principle, in that process of opening and closing the heavenly gates?
Yeah, so to know when to be inactive.
Yeah.
And to know when to be active.
But all through that process, you are like yin. You are soft, you are supple, you are not aggressive. No matter what, say if the situation in your life was to be overly active at your job or or whatever you're doing, but you still remain soft and
more feminine.
More feminine.
Yes.
As opposed to being aggressive and
right.
remaining humble, remaining compassionate.
Yeah. It's very challenging, isn't it? Like we need to remain this attitude, but also that like opening and closing the gates of heaven can be what expanding, contraction of the universe, and also it could be like inhale, exhale. That's a little bit like active and inactive.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like
kind of representative of kind of what we were talking about a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, once you inhale, exhale just naturally happens.
Yeah.
So you don't have to put any effort. Yes.
The universal one, like you mentioned, was actually really like, I guess, like the macrocosmic and the microcosmic for us. Like, so, the universe has those qualities of expansion and contraction. We also have that qualities in our mind, right?
Yes.
Like when our consciousness is expanding, what happens? You're growing, you're learning. When you're contracting, what happens? You're fearful, you're tense. You are in protection mode.
Yeah, and the unease and
yeah. You know what I mean? So when the universe is still expanding, right? So the universe is expanding and it's just ever growing, and it's a beautiful place to be, right?
Yes.
But when the universe begins to contract, and it will, then it'll be a complete different reality for whatever life forms are living in the universe at that period of time.
Yes.
So same for us, right? When we look at ourselves on a microcosmic level, when we are in a contracted state of consciousness, it's not a very fun reality to be in,
Yeah, you tend to be more negative. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
You're more reactive to negative emotions and things like that.
Yeah.
But again, key is to remain to play the role of a woman. Isn't it? Like you said, whether that's expanding or contracting, whether that's active or inactive, at all time, you stay that soft, feminine place.
Yeah, like water.
Yeah, like water. Yes.
Yeah, see, Lao Tzu always uses a feminine as a representation of the Tao, right? Like so, and in the Tao Te Ching, he did say, know the young or the masculine, but stick to the
That's
yin,
right.
the feminine. So, and that's actually supposed to be our mentality at all times, and that relates also to martial arts. So if you look at martial arts, even combat-oriented martial arts, then the best way to deal with an opponent is remain in the yin, because you're present, you can deal with any situation appropriately and immediately. If you're young, you're
Always
tense,
ready to go.
you're ready to go, and that may be good in some forms of combat-oriented
Yes.
martial arts, but very few.
Yeah, that's just moment by moment, isn't it? Like you have to remain as a soft that yin plays
Yeah.
to even like to remain calm. And
Yeah.
and then you will pick the right time to attack.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah. Because you're completely present, like it said in the first few lines, right? Attending
Yeah.
fully. So you're completely present in that moment, instead of when you're young, you're thinking about your attack. You're not thinking about what they're doing. You're thinking about this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then you've already cracked me and I'm already KO'd. You know what I mean? Instead of looking and observing you and thinking I'm going to react to what you do.
Right.
You know?
You almost kind of lose sense of bigger perspective, isn't it?
Yes.
Like because you're only seeing foreground, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow you to see whole picture.
No. Yeah. You're not attending fully.
Yes.
All right. So we move on to the next one.
Yeah. Understanding and being open to all things, are you able to do nothing?
Yeah. And understanding clearly all directions, can you be without intellectuality? This is an interesting one. So that one's understanding and being open to all things. Exactly. So you're present and you're open to all life, but
Yes.
can you deal with life, as we mentioned before, from a place of vairagya? Can you be, it's an old adage in the Tao Te Ching of when nothing is done, all is done.
Yes.
So can you have that sort of mentality of not overly thinking, like Derek uses intellectuality? Can you be without intellectuality?
Yes.
So like, can you not have a perspective of how the world is, but allow the world to be
Exactly.
how it is?
That is to say, we need to be able to accept anything and everything.
Yes.
Right. But keep an open mind.
Yes.
Right. And embrace it. That's the thing. Like, are you able to do nothing? So not reacting to what's happening outside, but just to allow all things to happen,
Yes.
arise and disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without having the interference pattern.
Yes.
Oh, I don't like what's going on out here.
Yes.
See, again, that's already intellectuality. That's
Yes.
already you saying this and that. I didn't like what she did there. I didn't, you know.
Not compulsively reacting to YouTube videos and just comment straight away, right? Like, are you able to do nothing? Can you
Oh
just
my
see
God.
what you see?
We need to start up Vairagya Tube or something. No comments, nothing. Just watch. If you don't want to watch, all good.
Yes, yes.
So, but that's in a very important part of the passage, because that's, I think, one of the big problems that people have. They get vexed by a lot of worldly problems, and look at the world at the moment, right, with everything that's happening. A lot of people are so vexed by so many world issues, they are unable to do nothing.
Yes.
They only react. And so you've already, like, if Lao Tzu had like a test for your spiritual aptitude, you were like not even
close.
1 out of 100. He's like giving you a fat 0.
Yeah.
And he's like, come back when you're a little bit smarter and a bit more mature, you know?
Yeah.
So this is...
We, again, like a growth of social media gives this, I think, illusion and delusion to individuals, as if we have a say to everything and that's gonna change things. But it does change some things, but not everything. And this illusion only leads to people to overreact to things. It only contribute to the more reaction after reaction, which is completely against what we're talking about.
Yes, that's right. So like the last parts of the chapter is kind of like almost like giving advice, isn't it, on
Yes.
on the sort of contemplating on what Lao Tzu has already said, and now Lao Tzu is saying, basically, in the last sort of 4 lines, this is what you're going to do.
Yes,
You know what I
true.
mean?
That's right. Like giving how to do, what
How-
to do.
yeah, like a how-to.
practical-
It's
yes,
a how-to manual. So what's it got? The first one is
Giving birth and nourishing, bearing yet not possessing.
yes, that's right. Yeah, and Derek says bearing it, rearing it, bearing without possession. So very similar, right? So very
Yes.
similar. And
again, giving birth and nourishing can be literally giving birth to someone, nourishing the
yeah, of
child, and
course.
this and that. But also, again, we can say something giving birth to some sort of achievement
Yes.
or something like that. Again, we try to achieve a goal or something.
Yes.
And when you did achieve, then bearing yet not possessing, you have achieved, but not take it as yours.
yes, exactly.
Right?
Like what we were mentioning earlier with Arjuna and Krishna, right?
Yes.
Don't overthink about you fighting your cousins and this and that. Don't think about the end result or the fruits of your action.
Yes.
Just be present and act without emotions.
Yes.
Just do what is necessary, bearing yet not possessing,
Yes.
basically, right? And so, like, you have to think about this from the context of the Tao as well, right? So, when you say giving birth and nourishing or bearing it and rearing it, the Tao gives like birth to life and nurtures it. So, but it doesn't lord it over it.
No.
So the Tao has given birth to all of us. You know, not like don't want to make that into some sort of anthropomorphic idea, but like it is the sort of the source of our existence,
Yeah.
and it's what nourishes us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't play favorites.
Yeah, it doesn't intervene with
No.
anything or claim ownership or whatsoever.
Exactly.
Just let 10,000 things to be.
Exactly.
literally.
Exactly. So basically, as we know, the Tao is like the natural laws of the material world, right? So it doesn't lord it over us, but the thing that we can learn from that is it has no human emotions, and so that's again what's important without possessing. It doesn't have the human emotions. It nurtures and gives life because it doesn't have the emotions. Do you see? Because the emotions interfere with. And I'm not talking about emotions here as like you're moved by something. Emotions being emotional, so like having like a perspective of the world, and which doesn't allow you then to nurture
Yes.
life.
Yeah, so no attachment.
No attachment.
No attachment.
No attachment
Yes.
at all.
No expectation.
No expectation.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. So the Tao gives birth to the 10,000 things, but it doesn't possess the 10,000 things.
Exactly.
Yes. That's what's important. It loves and nourishes all, but does not lord it over them, as the Tao Te Ching says. And as you said about attachment.
Yeah.
And again, see, and as we know on an individual level, being too attached taps our creativity. It destroys our creative energy.
Yeah, it just blinds us from something from being able to see something bigger,
Yes,
right? It
yes.
just eclipses the vision.
So you can do anything. You are the childlike, infinite potential. But once you're an emotional person with personal agendas and this and that taps your creative energy. And all the Tao is trying to do with all of us is express its beauty, and through your own uniqueness. But we are blocking that
Yeah.
from happening because we build this prison around our mind, and we don't let like life come into it, and we have our own way of seeing the world.
That's right. You're just so set in your own way. You don't want to go. You don't want to expand
No,
your perspective.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
So the next line, what do we have here?
Yeah, working yet not taking credit, leading yet not dominating.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Derek says achieving without arrogance, raising without domination. So pretty similar.
Similar from the previous lines. Isn't
Yes.
it? Like you work hard for something but not taking credit. You don't claim to get praise, or you have any expectation from achieving something.
No.
Right? You just, again, like you said, no emotion, non-attachment. You just work.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Remember back in the old days, it used to be very common, it would have been common in Korea too, is that you would write a book or you would make a piece of art, for example, and it was very common that you wouldn't put a name to that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, or you would use a pseudonym.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's not very common in this day and age, and it's hard to get book contracts and that like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, but that was very common because
Yes.
there was, especially back in that day and age, especially when we go back 500,000 years ago, it was much more pure. The expressions of art were more pure because they weren't mixed with commercialization and so forth and so on. So
It was much more pure. It was just for art.
it was just for art. It was
Yes.
just for the sake of art itself.
Yes.
It wasn't for, you know, we can say that, okay, some of us, you know, we all do what we want to do, but then in the back of your mind, there might be a thing like, oh, well, you know, I hope it does well. And you know what I mean? There's always these things going on, right?
And again, there is saying in old saying in Korea, like to do anything to achieve something. So you give everything. You just give your very best to do something, but all the rest give up to the heaven.
Exactly. Let the Tao take.
Let it take its own life on its own, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you can burn yourself out by shopping it around or something like that.
Yeah.
And usually you don't get much traction that way anyway. So you know, so and leading yet not dominating. That's a very important part of the chapter, right? Like, and that also sort of leads into the sage, right? So the sage it teaches us to walk the path, but they don't have any need to control us. They teach us how to walk,
Yep.
but they don't give us any sort of crutches or this and that to.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to depend on them.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
You know, so.
And I think this could also apply to the individual level as well, that you lead your life, you guide your life somewhat, but then you don't try to own your life itself.
No.
Yeah.
Because it's not really your life, right?
Yeah.
In some sense, well, it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like you're born into this meat suit, and then we all claim dominion over ourselves. Like, this is me, and it's like, well, kind of, it's like but once you become food for worms,
Yes.
where are you going to be going? This is me.
Yeah.
It's
Not there anymore.
It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So now we come to the last line, which actually pretty much is a conclusion to everything.
Yes. This is the primal virtue.
This is called mystic virtue, Derek says. And so this is the virtue, the virtue of the non-virtuous, as I explained in Effortless Living.
Yes. And achieving the knowledge of unknowing and doing without doing, the effortless action. And again, here the primal virtue is the conclusion. After all, once you gained the embracing the Tao, attending fully and becoming supple like a babe.
Yes.
Achieving the primal vision, and without cleverness, and play a role of feminine. That leads to this mystic virtue.
Yeah. So basically, that virtue is, and as it concludes, everything that we've said about this chapter and what the chapter actually says is about. It's really all about letting go of control, isn't it? Letting go of control, and as you mentioned earlier, it's about allowing the heavens or allowing the Tao to kind of guide your life, as opposed to allowing your intellectuality, your emotions, guide your life. You're giving your power away to get the power that you always wanted, which is the power of the Tao.
Yes. Yeah, the key is that thing, isn't it? Like you said, keeping distance away from your own emotion and intellect.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that often plays bigger part than the feminine side, our true nature.
Exactly.
Right. So we need to keep distance from our own emotion and intellect. So when we need to be able to catch when we react in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So often, emotional and from intellectually thinking and this and that. So that's something that we need to be aware of.
Yes. So it's the complete opposite to how people are in general.
Yes.
Right? So remaining humble, remaining soft, allowing life to be as it is. And as people know who follow the Tao, and kind of Lao Tzu explains this a little bit, is that when you give away that control and you get that power that you always, well, not that we always wanted it, but that it's always there when we have a mind that's empty, is that things in life seem to happen miraculously and there's like a magical quality to reality. But it's just the Tao. And the Tao is always there. But the problem why we don't experience this miraculous, magical reality where life just has a way of sort of unfolding like a flower is because we're in our own way.
Yes. And also, we trying to make it happen. We induce it. That's why it doesn't happen.
I want to live an extraordinary life, so I'm going to do this and this and this and that. And it's like, well, that's actually not how you will live an extraordinary life. You will live a life of suffering going down that path. Yeah. But if you let go, wow, you can live in a beautiful world and you can produce whatever the Tao wants of you, you know.
Again, literally let things be and just embrace it all and accept it.
Yeah. There was a really... Charles Bukowski said a really beautiful thing. For those who know Charles Bukowski, famous poet, he was saying that because he didn't have a lot in life, right? But he made a decent living with poetry and this and that. And he wasn't in an age like the 70s and 80s where people actually appreciated art a lot more. And he said, it's a funny thing because he said, the gods have been good to me. And the interviewer was like, what do you mean? He's like, because like they kept me in a place where I felt comfortable. I didn't have too much. I didn't have too less, but I lived in a sort of my life has been set in a way that is perfect. He's like, I didn't have too much or too less, but and he kept saying the gods have been good. The gods have been good. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what it is, right? Like that's what it is. Like you're not exceeding your limits, but you're also not diminishing your sort of state. You know.
Nowadays we all trying to be somewhat a copycat, and we all want to actually make our life become a copycat as well of someone else's life, right?
Yes.
So we all have these grandiose goals, and they set the goal, what I'm gonna achieve in this many years, and I'm gonna do this and that. But at the end of the day, I think all these goals that you set are actually eclipsing your vision from being able to see your true nature and the living life accordingly, I think.
Yep.
And I think that's what Charles Bukowski, his life was the original, which just followed his own path, really, isn't it? He didn't try to be someone else, or he had such sarcasm towards society, and but again, he was a beautiful soul.
Yeah, he was the genuine article.
Yes,
you know, and a lot of people say, oh, but he was a drinker and he was this and that, and it's like he just did him.
Yes,
he did him.
Yes,
you're trying to live up to some sort of moral.
Yes. What's good or what's bad.
Yeah, like, what's good or what's bad. Charles Bukowski did him.
Yes, exactly.
And he didn't let other people, determine his life.
Yes. Again, what's good or what's bad is not us telling that someone else told us that's bad or good or bad, right? So we are just kind of subconsciously internalized it, and we are repeating the same values of what society told us. But that's not how it is. That's not the following our own natural path of life.
No,
there is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong, or evil, or angel or whatever. It's just giving value. That is only value coming from what someone else told us. So that we need to kind of claim that back for ourselves.
Yeah. The Tao doesn't have commandments.
No.
It doesn't say, thou shalt not drink, or thou shalt not be sarcastic. The Tao's actually, sarcasm is like, this is perfect. Sarcasm is great. It makes fun of like the present
Yeah,
time.
it's great.
It's great. But the thing is that people like superimpose, especially Abrahamic perspectives,
Yes.
onto Taoism. And saying, but then they also say, oh, but Taoism is not moral at all. And it's like, well, it's natural moralism, which is amoral. And it's not that, like the Tao has a commandment for drinking alcohol, for example, but what you do know from living life is that if you drink too much, it can be problematic.
Exactly.
We
learn.
We learn.
We learn at late teens and early 20s,
Yeah.
right?
You learn as you live.
Yes.
You don't need a commandment to say, thou shalt not drink. You know, so like, and this is Taoism, man. Allow people to express their nature and Charles Bukowski is a good example of someone who, as you mentioned, was just the genuine article.
Yes.
He didn't allow society and that to dictate the terms to him, and hence his poetry is in some sense like anti-establishment, anti-society in some sense, you know, but also beautiful in the sense of like highlighting the ugly side of life.
Yes.
Which Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi are sitting around going, what, this guy, he got it.
He got it.
He got it.
That's
You know what I
it.
mean? Everyone's all going all glamorous and this and that, but Charles is like, pee in his pants, and you know, poetry is all about the crappy life and stuff like that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But it actually exists. You know?
Yes.
So anyway, I think that's about it. But it's a good chapter 10. It's a bit of advice, isn't it, for people in leadership and
how to guide ourselves, right? Guide ourselves through our own life, and again, also how to to do things for others, and how to be if you're a leader or in charge of something.
Yep.
Yeah, it can apply to anyone and everyone.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's the Tao.
Yeah.
It is everyone and anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
That's it. All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.